I am here with Rupert from KPMG. Rupert, it's so great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Can you please start by sharing a little bit as to what you do?
I'm a forensic accountant. I'm a fraud investigator. Been doing that for the last 15, 16 years. And essentially, we go in when the client's had a problem and help them understand what happened, how big it was, who was involved, when it happened, what they need to do to stop them happening again.
Describe a little bit of your transition from that strong SME knowledge into what it looks like to put things into code.
Well, for the last few years, I've been on a journey to see how we codify what we do as investigators. Turns out it's quite challenging. Firstly, because the data sets we typically deal with are a mess. Clients don't call us because it's all rosy. And secondly, because every fraud is different. It's not like you've got this repeatable process that you can lift and shift from job to job. And then particularly when you're dealing with millions of unstructured documents that give you the context as to what's been happening. Because often in transaction data, a bogus transaction looks the same as a normal transaction. And it's those unstructured documents that give you the context around the transaction, allowing you to understand whether it's legitimate or not.
The concept of turning SME knowledge into code. A lot of companies tend to start with, here's technology, and I'm going to try to find a nail to hammer on the wall. But at the end of the day, from a business perspective, what your customers, what anyone really cares about is not the technology, it's the solution that you're trying to come up, right? Like the outcome. Can you tell us a little bit about what that journey was, having a problem that you thought, hey, code is the right solution to this problem?
Well, we went after the big challenge of early case assessment. Day zero, no one knows anything. You walk onto site, there's a problem, you don't know how big, you don't know who's involved, and it's essentially a race then to get answers as quickly as possible. The really old school way would be you talk to a lot of people, you look at the financial data and you start manually sifting through documents. Technology came along that allowed you to electronically search documents, use metadata searches, keyword searches, but you're only ever looking at a fraction. You can only ever look at what's possible in a day. You can try and look at millions of documents, but it's going to take you a big team, a long time, and cost a heck of a lot of money. We're very good at following our noses and finding the lines of inquiry and the hot docs in spite of those limitations, but you don't get holistic coverage, and it can take you months. It can take you months to stumble across the leads that essentially is like a ball of string, and you're trying to find the ends, and you're pulling up different bits, and then suddenly you get the thread that you unpick. What I wanted to do here was get 100% coverage of the documents out of the box.
It's pretty ambitious.
Very. So what we've done is essentially start with entities, because that gives you something to hang all of the context to. And typically this will involve either individuals or third parties. Essentially, to get money out of the business, to strip assets out of the business, you often need third parties. And so understanding what entities are in your data set is hugely important because the markers often revolve around those entities. For example, if you have financial documentation that doesn't involve your client, why would you have confidential data in your data set that doesn't involve your client? And so you start understanding who they are and what they're doing. By identifying the entities throughout the data set, you then have the context around why the entity is mentioned. You can then resolve those entities together to get an enriched pattern. And so out of the box, you can understand not only what all the entities are in your data set, you can understand what they're doing in there, what they're involved with. And then you can map the relationships. So from within those documents, you start to understand not only who is talking with whom, but who is involved with what, and therefore the giant network graph that then comes off the back of that. And you start looking for relationship patterns of potential concern, transaction loops, non-arm's length relationships, and essentially you can pre-build patterns, do community detection to see what comes out. But also with the enrichment, now you can ask questions of it. Because if you just, chuck a million documents into Copilot, it's going to fall over. It doesn't like it. It's just whereas actually, if you pulled out the entities, you pulled out the context, and then you've enriched that and essentially brought it all together. Now the LLM's got something more tangible to work with. It can actually start to give you meaningful insight. But it's also really important that it's all traceable. So everything that the chatbot comes back with, it needs to have a document reference. I need to be able to see the underlying document associated with the point of interest, because everything needs to be referenced, particularly if it ends up in court.
Yes, and which is interesting, right? Because that is one of the things with LLMs, and I think I don't know if I heard Ali Ghodsi say this last year at a Databricks Summit. I think it was, right, when we were talking about Genie, for example. And one of the things they were talking about was, hey, when your CFO is making a presentation, presenting some important documents from the right authorities, you can hallucinate. that is not. There's like zero failure. It's no failures acceptable. How much manpower did this save you?
That is a difficult question, because I don't necessarily know whether I would have found it without the tech.
You're heading to my second question there, which is like, okay, how does it compare to the quality of the work? Yeah.
Because what it does is give you lines of inquiry, and there's a cracking job a few years ago that I would love to have had this tech with, because it took us 6 months to find the way that they were siphoning money out of the organization. With the tech now, I would hope to do that in weeks. And that's not to say that you wouldn't still spend those months of effort building the whole fact pattern together, but we stumbled across that because we're quite good at what we do. Suddenly, actually, you've got a lot more certainty that if there is substance of concern in there, you know it straight away, which helps with stakeholder buy-in, which helps people understand that something does need to be done about this. The pushback we get at the start of investigations of, oh, it's going to be expensive, and is there really anything there? I trust my people. There's definitely not a problem here. If you can show that's not necessarily the case, then suddenly actually there's a lot more buy-in to do it properly.
How can some of your customers take advantage of this solution?
There are review platforms that we typically work with, and actually you can embed this just alongside the normal review platform. And when you then link the document references, actually you pull up the underlying document within the review platforms. And that's probably I think that's the easiest way that we've come across that we're going to be serving it to customers. But also it stands alone, as in you can just take the data set, doesn't need to touch a review platform. You can just process it separately. And this is where Databricks has been fantastic. So it's given us the infrastructure that gives us the flexibility to deploy it in multiple ways.
What's next for your team?
For me, this is the start of the journey. So we went after the big chunky thing that's very, very difficult to do, because we knew that would generate the interest, generate the buzz. But actually, through the power of LLMs, it's reimagining what the whole end-to-end lifecycle looks like for investigation, from the problem statement coming in, from the concerns coming in, to the way that you iterate the analysis, to the way that you write the report at the end. And so it's about taking the SME knowledge that we have and upscaling them, doing it quicker, doing it faster, taking out the drudgery. So we work a lot with open source data, and we've got corporate intelligence teams who are very, very good at finding data points. But within that, they have a lot of drudgery in what they do. So for example, referencing all the reports back to a corporate registry, because it all has to be fully verifiable, fully auditable. If you've got hundreds of directorships, that takes a long time. They're taking weeks to write the report, and it's pretty tedious. But actually, we've automated that now. It'll run the APIs to either data aggregator or to the corporate registry itself, and you're talking in a couple of days what would have taken. And they're very happy for it. But for me now that we've got a few components which are working, it's about having the whole end-to-end lifecycle reimagined, because that's where the real value comes.